Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the debut of Tucson Talks, a new series of virtual conversations with film and TV professionals presented by Film Tucson, Visit Tucson, and A Street Productions. My name is Peter Calinoti of Film Tucson. When we were deciding on who our first guest should be for this new series, Pablo Cruz came to mind immediately because, well, firstly, we're big fans of his many projects, but also because of Film Tucson's long history of facilitating film and TV projects from Mexico. The TV series Run Coyote Run, for instance, which shot the first 2 seasons in Tucson and Naco, Arizona. Or 600 Miles, the award-winning 2015 feature film directed by Gabriel Ripstein, starring Tim Roth. Therefore, a conversation with one of the preeminent producers in Mexico made perfect sense for us, and we're delighted that Pablo agreed to take part. So I'm now going to introduce Vicki Westover, former director of Tucson City, Mexico, and founder of the festival. She's with A Street Productions, and she'll be conducting the interview today. Take it away, Vicki.
Thanks, Peter. And before I start the interview with Pablo, Peter and I want to acknowledge that where we are in Tucson is located on Tohono O'odham Nation homelands and the lands of the Pasquayaqui tribe. So thank you, Pablo, for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. And thanks to those of you who are listening. We see that our audience ranges from students to seasoned filmmakers. And so we're cognizant of that. And we hope that you'll hear something that's beneficial to your studies or your careers. And we look forward to your questions when we take a break for questions. Okay, Pablo, we have listeners from various parts of the world today, and so it's very good that we can hear from you because of your international career in both film and television, so you can provide us a global perspective. But not everyone listening today is familiar with your career, so how about we start with you walking us through it, and it's very long, so if you could just give us highlights of your career.
Of course. Well, I was born in Mexico City in 1971. I'm about to turn 50. And I've always fell in love with motion, pictures moving, pictures still. I was always obsessed with photography. And I thought that the best choice for my life to be somebody was to do filmmaking. So I went to study in New York. I did a school at School of Visual Arts. And I did my undergrad and there, which was amazing time to learn the trade of filmmaking in a city like New York. And then I moved to London and I finished my school at the London College of Printing. And then I started producing. I've never done anything else. I was a cameraman for a while, but survived to pay the rent. But I've always been a producer. And the first film I produced was at school, and it was a film that shot in Ghana. So, it was always my career started with something that was very challenging, which was to produce a film in Ghana in a place that has a very limited film industry. And so it was adventure from day one. And then I opened my first production company in London, which was called Verdura Productions. Then moved to Barcelona, where I also happened to open a company there called The Lift. And The Lift was a company that produced advertising. Barcelona was a launching pad for a lot of talent at the time, so I got to meet a lot of people that I now keep working with. And then Canana was born. Through my years in London, I got to meet Gael. We became very close. And one day Gael proposed to open a company back in Mexico. I had been living outside of Mexico for a long time, so it was one of those big questions that someone asks you, which is, you want to go back to Mexico and open a film production company when there was no independent film in Mexico, for sure, no television. The television world was dominated by 2 free TV chains, which obviously were not interested in doing independent anything. So it was interesting to take that decision. So we decided to open Canana. Gael invited Diego Luna to be part of that company. We had an amazing luck to be able to open the company, had a first look deal with Focus Features, and we rolled for a while with Canana and Focus back in Mexico. It was very hard times because there was nothing. No, I was the first on the first board of producers to negotiate with the government what we use now to finance all our movies, which in its day was called the 226 law and later became the 189. And I was kind of in the negotiating panel with the tax authorities to be able to make it actually a functioning film fund, which today still works and keeps happening and is the epicenter of how every single film in Mexico gets made. And then Canana became a recognized brand. We produce a lot of films, and we decided to start making television from from the very start. My experience from being in England pushed me always to think of television as another way of expressing what we wanted to. So we were very aggressive in trying to make independent television in Mexico. Finally, we managed with Canal 11, which is a government-owned channel. And we made 2 shows that took ratings away from the other channels, and they were very angry with us because they couldn't understand why independent television could actually appeal to the masses, and it does. And then, we I think we produced altogether at Canana 30-something films and like about 5 TV shows of 2 seasons each at least. And then it was time for me also to look into other places. Mexico City became kind of a bubble where nothing else could happen. This is before Netflix and everything we know now. So we thought that a good idea was to expand Canana into the US market. So I moved to Los Angeles and opened Canana in the US. And the first film that we produced was CESAR CHAVEZ. So very interesting way to get into that universe. It's a film that I'm very proud of. And then we continued producing television in the US while continuing in Mexico with the stuff that we've been making, And then, as all good marriages, things had to come to an end. And like about 4 years ago, 2000, what is it now, 21? So this is about 2017, I think. Gael, Diego, and myself, we took the decision of splitting paths. They were tired of me doing other stuff, and I was tired of just doing their stuff. So, I mean, we just had to move on, and I was very hungry to do projects that were not necessarily what we've been doing so far. The first project that I was involved in the new Canana was Fear of the Walking Dead. I produced season 2 of that show for AMC. And then a project that I'm still involved with, which is Luis Miguel, through Canana in the new reign. And then about 2 years ago, you realize that Canana was a great experience and everything is amazing, but that I was a little bit tired of writing solo and to be just there. The only guy that you talk to is yourself in the mirror as a producer. It's kind of a hard position to be. So I went back to the friends that I had for the last 20 years that I've been having fun and getting drunk with, and always a reference to the work that I love. And I called Enrique Lopez Laviña and Diego Suarez, who immediately reacted, and we all decided that it was maybe a good idea to join forces in a thing called El Estudio. So El Estudio is my new adventure. We signed the documents of incorporation with our investor exactly the day the WHO declared COVID a pandemic, so very timely. So it's been an amazing ride. I think it's one of the best things, the best decisions I've taken. So this is our first year. We'll be 1 year in a few days. And I believe that, by joining forces with other people that are, they have a mind like yours, it's kind of the future, I believe.
Great. Well, very impressive. And I want to hear more about your El Estudio plans, but we'll just spend a little bit of time talking still a little bit about you and your earlier work maybe, and then then we'll move on. But yeah. So if people look you up and read articles about you, you're often described as someone who's willing to take risks. And to me, that means, the way I interpret that is that you're willing to produce the work of new directors and nurture that talent, and that you're willing to work in a variety of genres and formats, and obviously a variety of countries. But what do you think was meant when you were described as someone willing to take risks?
Well, I mean, I guess, yes. It's one of my passions from day one is to find talent that is raw. Uh, Maybe my being raw as well. I mean, together, everybody raw, growing up and doing things together and finding spaces where you usually don't find the filmmaking that happens on the first filmmaker and push those boundaries. I think that first time filmmakers are always some sort of like living in a bubble of or in a little square where you're only thinking of making your movie because that's of course a priority. So a producer in that respect, and what I love doing is expanding that vision and to transform something that looks very small into something that can be a universal film. The first film like this is a film I produced. One of the first films we did at Canana was Cochochi. Cochochi was a film made by a couple, husband and wife. Um, we shot in the mountains of Chihuahua in a language that only very few people speak, which is Raramuri. And that probably is that kind of film that is referred to. I mean, who will go out and finance a movie in a language that only very few people speak, about indigenous people with first time filmmakers coming out of film school. And that film became one of the to me it's one of the most successful films I've ever made, and it took us to places that are unique, no? And the film presented in Venice, and then we went to Toronto, and that is the type of stuff that I love doing, to get involved from a very early stage and work with the filmmakers or with the filmmaker to bring that film that looks so small from the distance into growing it and making it something that appeals to a lot of people. Because I do believe that the more specific you are with filmmaking, the more universal it becomes.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the case with a lot of producers, right? They want a more of a sure bet thing. So bravo to you for that. Okay, so sort of building on that, the work that you did with Kanana, my understanding is that what you wanted to sort of leverage Mexico's great new but isolated talent, right? Some new voices. So do you think that you achieved the sort of the impact you wanted on some structural imbalances in Mexico? And then following up on that is what's the current state of filmmaking and distribution in Mexico?
Well, yes. I mean, I don't think it's something that it was I will tell you what happened was we were living on a jar of mayonnaise with the lid on, and we couldn't get out of it. And finally, when Canana was created, and in parallel to Canana, there were other production companies opening at the same time because we were desperate. People were just desperate to tell stories. And imagine Mexico, if we have enough stories to tell, I don't think there's enough days in the world to tell our stories. It's a country that has millions of things to say and to share with the world. Not always nice things to say, but then again, that's who we are. But I think that I helped bring those filmmakers who were trapped in that jar into become references to worldwide filmmaking. I produced a movie called MISS BALA, which was perhaps our best ride in that. It was a film that became part of that Mexican movement, praised in Cannes, and it went to every single festival I remember. And it was also a very successful film in the box office. It was distributed by Fox in Mexico. It was a studio movie, the Fox market.
We screened it in Tucson City, Mexico. Fox let us have it before it opened theatrically. We had over 1,000 people for that screening.
Yeah, so that is the type of stuff that I believe, together with the work of my colleagues like Jaime Romandia, Fernando Robsar, Ina Payan, and all of the producers that came out of that first generation of film funds, coming from the government, that managed to transcend beyond our borders, and that now is what we all. I mean, of course, we always had Iñárritu, Cuarón, and Del Toro as, some sort of like totem somewhere, there. But we had to also create our own stuff, and be independent of those three big guys, and also have these new filmmakers coming out every year. There's a new guy or a fantastic filmmaker, a woman filmmaker that you want to follow like, Mariana Chenillo produced a film called Paraíso with her. It was her second film. Also trying to do a romantic comedy that was talking about the social issues and obesity in Mexico. So yes, that's always been the goal. And now the second part of the question is, obviously I've seen how everything changes, right? Before it was impossible to get your film sold or anybody to see your movie because the only option you had was to do a theatrical release in Mexico and have, of course, a fantastic sales company. In fact, I opened my own sales company together with Stuart Ford called Mundial because there was nobody selling Mexican movies. Nobody cared. So we had to create our own. But I saw how everything changed one day when Netflix arrived in our doors and made possible that a film that otherwise would have been impossible to be seen in Japan or India or anywhere, now it is an immediate thing. And you might think that, of course, it loses the magic of cinema, which is the business we're in, no? But I also think that immediate distribution, especially now after the COVID epidemic, it's part of our learning curve, and we're becoming new type of audiences, and we just have to learn and live it and enjoy it. I have to tell you that, for example, Las Elegidas, which is my first film that was sold universally to Netflix, it was sad not to see it ever opening in a cinema in Paris, but it was incredible to see it, to get comments from places like, Russia commenting on the film. And you can't have both things, right? I mean, we're lucky that we managed to do a theatrical on that movie in Mexico, but I do believe that the state of cinema and television in Mexico now has changed dramatically. We are the epicenter of Spanish-speaking content. We are the most attractive market in Spanish, for sure. And that is driving a lot of production through Mexico. Of course, a lot of it is TV shows, but everybody wants to come to Mexico to gain subscribers, right? Because we have a population of 120, 130 million people who have never subscribed to anything, most of them, and who are eager to start subscribing because that's what's going to happen in the future. So everybody's eyes are here, and there's so much content and so much work that it's amazing, but it's overwhelming too.
Right. Okay. I have so many things to ask to jump off of those things, but I'm going to, you mentioned Mariana Chenillo's film, Paraíso, which we also screened in Tucson, Mexico. So that leads me to this question. You've worked with many talented men and women, such as rising producer Elena Fortes as well, right? So from your perspective, what are the current efforts to increase participation by women and people of color in Mexico and in Europe too, since you're working now primarily in Europe?
I mean, I will tell you that we're in somehow in a curve, okay? Yes, sadly, when there's a project it happens to me every day that we're looking for a director for a new project. We all wanted to be a woman, and there's only 5, 6, 7. I mean, yes, I'm not going to lie to you. It's a very unbalanced numbers on the men's side and on the woman's side, and that is obviously wrong. But I do believe that day and day, this balance is somehow getting there. And the work that women filmmakers are doing in Mexico is perhaps the best. We work in Luis Miguel, for example, we work with a director that was just, finishing her second film. I have distributed the first one, Natalia Beristain, for example, and she, after directing a few episodes of Luis Miguel, she became a complete phenomenon. I mean, she to me is the best, one of the best directors that you will find anywhere, not just Mexico. So those are the incredible surprises that, of course, finishing the patriarch-run system brings you, right? We've been idiots all this time, and obviously things are changing, and hopefully the faster, the merrier. Mm-hmm. And in the production side, I think production-wise, we've always been very balanced. Don't forget that Berta Navarro's, Guillermo del Toro's producer, was the guiding light for most of us. And in the group that we had for when we were negotiating the tax incentive in Mexico, I mean, we were yes, there were less women, but for sure we were very balanced. And I mean, there was, you wouldn't feel, I mean, I don't know if it was 4 and 5, but Monica Lozano was there, Laura Imperiale, Ina Payan. So it was always, the producers, I think, have always been a little bit more balanced, I would say. Proof is, you know, best documentary producers in Mexico are all women, no? Marta Sosa, Elena, Natalia. No?
Right. We've hosted them all here, and I look forward to seeing their work in the future. Okay, so let's sort of move a little bit into the future then. You know, in a previous conversation we had, you referred to this this moment of this this independent television moment that we're in, and you also said that you believe that film will reign again soon. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're observing and what you're thinking when you said that?
Well, I think we're all saturated from serialized television. There's going to be more. I mean, the experience of watching whatever it is that you watch, if it's Amazon, Netflix, Apple, whatever, I think we're all feeling that saturation of not really knowing what to choose every night or every weekend, whatever is your viewing experience. And I tell you, in my personal experience, the place where I find refuge is a film. A thing that you know it's going to end on a Saturday night at, you know, maybe 1 a.m. and that's it. You don't have to binge watch and go to sleep at 5 a.m. watching, you know, The Crown or whatever, right? I do think that that is going to push TV shows to become more benchmark and reference rather than volume. I think it's not going to happen soon because obviously for Paramount Plus and for all of the new HBO Max and so on and so forward, all of the new networks that are coming, they will need to gain audience members by having a lot of variety. Most of them have library, but there's going to be so many TV shows being shot that I think we all as audience will feel completely overwhelmed, and we'll look into the event of filmmaking, which again, we might not go to the cinema sadly ever again as we used to, because I think this year showed us that what we thought it was part of our lives, when it stopped being, I don't know if anybody suffered any, you know, withdrawal symptoms from not going to the cinema. I did for sure, but I managed to survive and substituted by watching every weekend something on stream television or a film. So I do believe that we are looking for the weekend event, and that is going to be for sure guiding the future to me into what the streaming platforms will have to bring us, which is novelty. And yes, there will be TV shows that you can be addicted to, but I do think that film will reign again as the primary source of loyalty to stay in those platforms.
Okay, well, we will see. So I'm kind of surprised to know that you actually have time to watch anything. So when you do have time to watch, I'm just curious, what are you watching and whose work do you admire?
I mean, I'll tell you that, yes, I cannot watch, yes, that's the sickness we're all in, I guess. I mean, I think there's so much work now. And I do believe that, I mean, again, films, Mank was an amazing movie that I watched that I loved. The MTV Films documentary on Wuhan, which I will make a mistake, I'm sure, on naming it, but it's 70 something days, 45 days, I can't remember how many days, 46 days it's called. I loved, it's just an amazing piece of propaganda, but with a very human nature and with people actually on it. A very smart move. I mean, television, I'm watching a lot of television on HBO, I have to say. They have amazing programming there. I'm addicted to documentaries, so they have good stuff there as well. And it was a weird year for filmmaking. I mean, now it's time to vote for the Academy Awards, and it's hard to know which are the films that are references. And maybe this is a good thing, because you will have a bigger choices where marketing campaigns didn't affect you. And I guess you always make choices based on how marketing manages to get into your head, and now there was none of that. So really, I guess films are now balanced equally everywhere, no? Because there was no opportunity for anybody to market anything. So we'll see what happens. It's a very interesting year.
Yeah, and well, I'm interested to see what happens down the road too.
Yeah,
not just the immediate future, but yeah. Okay, so well, now that it's proven that successful storytelling on the international level no longer is belongs exclusively to the English language.
yes.
And we're all watching these. I watch so much foreign television now. what you see as the future of the Spanish language market?
I think we're we are the second, I think it's the second largest spoken language in the world. So I only see bright stuff coming out of there. As you just said, I think the hegemony of English dominating, English as a language that dominates everything else. Yeah, I remember perfectly in the past when you had an amazing project and you had to raise more than $3 million, you had to make it in English, which is embarrassing, no? And I think La Casa de Papel and few other shows that we've seen change that forever. There's no question ever that a show in Hebrew or in Arabic, but shot in Israel is as appealing as a show that you might never ever watch in English in the abundance of shows. And of course, I mean, I'm going to talk about something everybody knows, but Parasite is a clear example of that. How can you be entertained in the same way as you are from a super blockbuster in the US with $120 million spent just in advertising, a film coming from Korea with very simple characters and beautiful filmmaking overtakes it completely. So I think those days are over. So I am very, yes, I obviously want to do something in English. I love it, but I'm not in a race to win anything there. I think the language that I speak and that I'm very proud of, and the content that we can make without having to change anything, because now anybody can watch it. It's what I want to do. I want to be completely particular and specific, as I said at the beginning, because now I know that works.
Great. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your plans for El Estudio?
Well, El Estudio is precisely that. El Estudio wants to be a reference for Spanish-speaking content and English language content with a Spanish DNA. And by that, I mean, of course, our beautiful Latinx environment. I won't say market because that sounds horrible. We're not a market. But I do think our plans are to be very loyal to what we like. We're getting old, and all we have that is very well tuned is our instinct. So use our instinct very strongly, choose the projects with the people that we want to spend 5 years with without actually having to struggle. And I think focusing on Spanish and all the Spanish-speaking countries is our priority, 100%.
Right. But I am curious to know about your experience working in the U.S. film industry.
Of course.
So tell us a little bit about that. And I'm curious to know, how different the structure and the processes were for you, or just compared to other experiences.
Well, I'll tell you that to make a film in Mexico in those days before now, today everything has changed, but in the days prior to this huge, overtaken by the streamers on every single shape or form. But before, it would take me 2 years to produce a film in Mexico, and it will be maybe a $1.5 million movie, and I will probably make maybe 20% of that back. Working in the US is add a zero to that, so it's a $10 million movie. You work perhaps less than the 2 years because it's just such a huge and fast market that allows you to turn around faster. There's an entire system to finance, package, lawyers and managers and agents, and everything works in a very synced way with very honorary rules that are not written, but they are respected by everybody. And you have to learn to play that and work within that. So it's amazing, without a doubt. It's the most organized industry in the planet, for sure. I mean, filmmaking, of course. But at the end of the day, you feel like you're abandoning the core of what your soul is all about. So you have to become marketable, and you have to be part of, what I call a cultural censorship, because only things that are, that can be successful are actually done. Whereas I would, hopefully today is changing, but working in the US is all about market. It's all about making a commercial and the actress and the package. And if you don't have these actors and this director, this will never get made. And it's all about adding without making any sense. And you can see that the films suffer, and that the films, although you can finance them faster and you have amazing investors that are sitting next to you and you can raise millions of dollars from them because it's nothing compared to the money is raised to other businesses in the US. The core of the movie gets lost, and you kind of end up making movies that are soulless. Not everybody's like this, of course, but that was kind of the experience that I kind of walk away with, and I will do it again in a bit. But I'm very happy to work in Mexico and in Spain because I feel closer to those stories, and I don't have to probably lie so much.
Well, one thing that I didn't expect to see actually on Netflix is TACO Chronicles. And it is so beautifully filmed. I mean, they feel, each episode feels to me like a small sort of Mexican independent film. So very unusual to find that, but so how was that project conceived, and how did you pitch that?
So it was an idea that was in my head for a long time. I love eating, and of course tacos, what I love the most to eat. And I try to pitch it in a million different ways, with a host, with like a tour around Mexico. I mean, it was always in my head to put together a project that had to do with food, and not only with the food, because that is something that is very broad, but how the food is made and the people who make it. And of course, Chef's Table was a big reference because it is one of those first shows that you see and watch that don't have a host, that the host is the chef itself, and the chef, it's honored as if he was, it is a superior creator of whatever they do. So without a doubt, Chef's Table was an inspiration, and I pitch it to Netflix a million ways, and they always say, I don't know if people want to see street food. It's more about the elegance of the etiquette of eating and the magic of the 3 stars, Michelin 3 stars. So, I never gave up, and eventually, through working with other people and sitting down with more colleagues, the idea of making it a show in which the taco spoke for itself, kind of the way that Chef's Table is the chef that explains its craft and whatever. Here we thought that taqueros, luckily, are not the most talkative people. I mean, the taqueros cannot introduce the tacos because there's 100 different ones, and it's you've eaten a taco. It's not necessarily the taquero, which is, I guess I couldn't see the show being narrated by the taqueros themselves, but we thought, why not the taco? So the taco becomes a character, and the taco, who's solid enough to be a character and defend its ground, tells you the story of who it is. And through that, you get to meet the best taqueros who serve that taco, and you actually get to see how they make it. So, I mean, I had a conversation with Juan Maine, who at the time was running Mexico for Netflix, and he loved the pitch. We watched a couple of shows that were references, and he said, let's do it. So we started with the research, of course, which was to go and eat all these tacos. And we would spend days and, eating at least in 7 or 8 taco stands just to see if our research was good or not. Because the most important thing about the Taco Chronicles is that the food has to be unquestionable. I mean, I know that everybody thinks they know which one's the best taco stand for themselves, but I can tell you these are the best taco stands in the planet. So we even went to Japan to find the best tacos for fish taco, because they might not be here, no? So that is the Taco Chronicles. It's one of those shows, as I was saying before, that it's pure honesty. There's no hidden agendas. There's nothing else but the pure joy of eating and celebrating food. And I had great colleagues working with me. Hallie, who's an amazing executive producer, she worked hand in hand with us, and the directors, Carlos, Santiago. I mean, we couldn't believe when we won the James Beard. I mean, that is, to me, if you're a foodie and you praise yourself as somebody who knows what they're doing in food, what else can you be proud of than getting a James Beard Award? I mean, it's like, what? So I'm a proud holder of that medallion, together with amazing chefs, and that's something that nobody can take away from me.
Yeah, you should be. It's really a joy to watch it. But I think, did you just hint that you're expanding the show to other countries and other cuisines, or?
Well, I can't tell you that, sadly.
Okay. But let me tell you this. Are you planning to come to Tucson? Because you really should. Because I don't know if you know this, but Tucson, it was the first city in the United States to be named the UNESCO City of Gastronomy.
Oh, there you go.
And we have some amazing chefs doing things with heritage foods here.
No, no, I mean, it's on the list, but I can tell you more.
Okay, terrific. Okay, well, let's see. I think we're going to need to turn to questions soon. Let me just see if there was something that I missed that I really wanted you to discuss. Oh, you know, I had mentioned this previous to you. Why don't you just, not very many people are familiar with Ambulante. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that history and its status?
Of course. It was the first year of Canana. We were still sitting in the porch of my house in Los Angeles with Gael Diego and another guy that we had in our company called Carlos and myself, thinking of what to do. And there was a documentary we loved from you know, someone who's not with us anymore called Eugenio Pavlovsky, who had directed an amazing documentary called Trópico de Cáncer.
We should screen that.
So we love that documentary, and we thought, okay, so if we're gonna have this, you know, I'll say focus light into us, and the company's, you know, Gael and Diego's, you know, limelight could be shared with filmmakers whose work is unique. And we thought, yeah, but what can we do with one documentary? How can we push it? I mean, who's gonna want to see it? So we thought of touring like a rock band with a documentary, with live presentations with the filmmaker, etc. And then we thought, but is it worth doing it with one documentary? Why don't we do it with more? So that's what Ambulante is. Ambulante is kind of a road show together with documentaries. And it was always the goal to somehow create a dialogue in a country that needs desperately to have dialogues all the time. And of course, never having a place where to show them. I mean, we for sure were a pioneer festival of showing documentaries. It became a thing about the place where we presented each documentary, I mean, the tour. So when Ambulante arrived in Oaxaca, the entire city turned itself around our festival, and it was the Oaxaca Ambulante Festival, and it was crazy. And then when we went to Monterrey, it was another crazy thing. And then every place that we went to, it was a happening, because these were cities that had no festivals on their own. We're talking about 15 years ago. So that, you know, incredible. I mean, we managed to get volunteers in each town. It became a thing. It became its own thing that was larger than us. And you know, Ambulante was always conceived to be. I mean, Elenita was part of the show from day one, and she ran it for a long time. Now she's no longer there, but we all had an amazing fun in the first few years. I mean, I'm no longer involved with the organization of the festival nor anything else. I mean, it suffered, of course, from COVID, and I know that, you know, it's not easy, but I'm very happy and proud that Ambulante is still alive, and that I was part of creating one of the most exciting projects that happen in Mexico today.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, we hosted some Ambulante screenings as part of Tucson Cine Mexico. Okay, well, it's time to turn to some questions from our listeners. So bear with me here as I pull these up and see. Okay, so. Sorry, I'm playing curator here as I look through them.
I can read those questions if you want me to.
You can see them too? Okay, well, here's one. Hola, Pablo. As a filmmaker from Mexico, what risks and barriers did you face when you set foot to produce outside of Mexico, for example, in Ghana and London?
Well, I guess I will tell you something that sounds completely chauvinistic, but it's true. But surviving Mexico, even without being a producer, is a challenge. So when you get to this place, I mean, like when you arrive in Ghana, you're kind of in Mexico. We're more or less the same, poverty driven and eager and enthusiastic, but blind at the same time. And so I mean, I couldn't speak, I mean, they all speak English, but I couldn't speak any of the local languages, but I could easily be understood because we wanted the same. And that applies to anything. I mean, I produced a film with Werner Herzog in Bolivia. I mean, it sounds very fancy, but it wasn't. And same thing, I mean, Bolivia, you're meant to be in a country that speaks Spanish and is your culture, but no, Bolivia, it's another universe. Bolivia, surprisingly, is an indigenous country, and we are the white people there, and they make sure that you know that. So you challenge other things, which is, okay, yeah, this is what we've been doing to around people for all this time. Now it's my time to deal with it. So it was very interesting to go to Bolivia. We were shooting in Potosí, and we were the only white people there, and it was very interesting. It was a lesson for sure. And of course, working with Werner, I can tell you it's a very big challenge, almost working with a lunatic.
Okay, well, I'd like to hear about that one day. We'll have to maybe do that off camera.
Crazy stuff.
Okay, so these questions really sort of jump around, but here comes another one. Hola, Pablo. Are you concerned that the platforms are going to destroy theatrical releases?
No, but it will. I think theatrical is already a very elite business. It was before the COVID. You had to have, a number of what I said at the beginning, or part of the conversation about making your film a marketing event, is you have to make so many compromises and offer so much to other people in order for your film to make any relevance in a overcrowded, shopping center. Is that a film? I mean, are you having the film you actually wanted to make when you have to invite an actress that is terrible, but she has a box office, and then the director you wanted to work with, or hey, even worse, you wrote the script, you were meant to direct it, but the studio told you somebody else has to direct it because you have no experience. So are all of these things right? I don't know. It was a carnage as well, and it was letting a lot of films not seen because the market was completely saturated. I mean, I remember in the last days of Canana distribution, because we had Canana had its own distribution company. We had a very good run. All the films that we all love and like, it was pretty much handpicked to be brought to Mexico. And the problem was the saturation of other films, of Hollywood taking over, and you could never compete, of course, with campaigns that are not even remote from the 10 cents you have to promote your movie. So I think cinema is going to go back to what cinema used to be before we could ever question it, which was events and big cinemas, as in the old days, when the films were for 2,000 people, when we can all share life again together. I think we will all go back to that huge cave, which feels almost like an opera, almost a theater. It's an event, you dress up, you actually, respect more the event of cinema rather than go to a multi-cinema broken down in 200 squares where you have 10 seats in one cinema, 15 in the other one. And, it's a labyrinth of stuff. I don't even know you can enjoy it. So I don't know. I think cinema will reign for sure, but it will become even more an event. And that's a challenge of filmmakers, because you can make an event without having all these film stars. We just had a film, which I cannot say it's a success because it was released in the middle of COVID, but it was a historical film, kind of the coming out of the closet of the gay community in Mexico, historical piece.
Right.
And we released it in the middle of the pandemic, and it was great. People actually came to see it because it's an event. And but it had two great actors, but nothing. I mean, Alfonso Herrera is an amazing actor, very successful, but he wasn't there because he could bring people. He was the best actor that we could choose, but I think it was the event. It was a film that you never see on screen, that had to be seen on screen, and people reacted to it. And that's, I think, what's going to happen. So as filmmakers, we will become more aware of that. We were going to have to play the same game we've always played with the studios or whoever it is that will release our movies. But I think it'll be a very interesting new place to do it, because people will react to unique experiences of filmmaking for sure. And all of the stuff that we were saturated with, and I'm not going to say comedies are bad, please don't quote me ever, but there were too many. I mean, Mexico is inundated with terrible comedies, and apparently that's what people wanted to see. Well, now that's on a network, on a platform, and if you want to see that horrible movie, you will watch it, but then it leaves space free for real filmmaking.
Yeah, as a programmer, I'm excited about the possibilities. Okay, here's another one. What do you look for in a script as a producer? For someone who is early on in their career, what steps do you recommend to get involved in film development?
I mean, as I said, it's all about instinct. I don't know what I'm looking on a script. I look for uniqueness. I look for a concept that nobody else has pitched me before. I look for the person behind it. I look for who's behind, where's the energy coming from? not too long ago, I was talking to somebody who was pitching me a story, and I was listening to it, and I said, I don't see why this is happening. I mean, everything is right, and you're a talented filmmaker, and your story is relevant and necessary, but is it coming from the right place? Sometimes we fool ourselves and we say, hey, let's tell the story of, to be redundant, but let's do a gay story of an African-American guy. And you're like, are you just wanting to be the guy doing the right percentage? Or is that story that you actually have to tell? Because if you don't tell that story, you won't be able to survive another day. So those are the energies that are behind a project, and that I feel. I don't know how to explain it, but you feel it. When someone's pitching you an idea or a story, you know where it's coming from and which part of the heart is coming from, or the soul. And those are the films that I want to support. That's what I'm looking into a film. And it might not even be the most relevant story, but the passion behind it might be unique. And that's filmmaking at the end.
Great. Well, here's a question from a student. In your opinion, what's the best way to keep your creative freedom and still have success in the film industry?
By fighting a lot and falling a million times. It's going to be painful, but it's worth it. It might never come, but whenever it comes and success shows up and you get selected in the Berlin Film Festival and you end up winning it, there's no, that's what it's all about. But that applies to anything, you're a soccer player or whatever.
Right. Well, you have a couple of invitations here. So some folks from the Navajo Nation have invited you. If you want to film on the Navajo Nation, they are here. They are there to assist you.
I was there, and I love the Navajo Nation. I love the Navajo taco.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm waiting for the episode on the Navajo taco.
It's coming to you.
Okay, good. I was going to mention that to you. Okay, let's see. Well, you mentioned, how excited you get when you see something, when so you know it when you see it. So of course there are a number of questions here about how do people get a script to you. That's the inevitable. I mean, that's always going to be.
Yes, I tell you one thing, which is sadly there's so much happening that we all have to be more careful, because if people say, and this is the story, it's very simple. Of course, we read and we love to read, but first we have to discuss what is that you're sending me, because what if I'm producing a thing that is exactly the same? And then you send me your script, and then when you see my film on the screen, you say, he stole my idea. And of course, I didn't steal your idea, because I'm not in the business of stealing ideas. But so there's a lot of, I'll say, resistance from producers like us to just accept a mailbox, and then, because then problems arise. And so we try to solicit scripts rather than just get them. And we hear a first pitch on the phone, and when we can stop on a phone call and say, wait, because we have a film that actually deals with that, the same topic or not. So we're very careful, but I guess we can figure out a way for you to get in touch with us, and a friend who's here on the call can help us figure out how to do it. But we don't receive scripts cold. We reject them immediately, because precisely what I just explained.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so let's see here. This is going back to the very beginning when you were talking about the start of your career, but this person wants to know, how did you come to the decision to switch from being a photography person? You're talking about still photography, or were you talking about cinematography?
I was I was a DP, yeah, a cinematographer.
DP, okay. How did you decide to make that switch? That's somewhat unusual, to go from DP to producing. You want the truth? Maybe to directing, but producing is unusual. So how did that come about?
The truth was, I hated waiting. I got tired of sitting on a dolly waiting for some bad producer to take a decision. So, and something happened very interesting, which is I was meant to be the cameraman in the film Going to Ghana. That was my graduation project from London College of Printing. And the producer got malaria. So she had to go back to England, and we were stranded in Ghana without producers. So I said, I'll do it, fuck it. So I started producing, I guess, empirically. But yes, being a cameraman is amazing, and sometimes I do it. I mean, it was a film that I did with a bunch of friends that you can watch called Child's Play. In English, in the US was called Who Could Kill a Child, I think it was called. That we did it as a group, and it was very interesting to go back to the camera. But yes, I could just got tired of being the guy sitting in a dolly waiting for someone to just keep moving. So I said, I think producing makes sense.
Yeah, well, you were probably a natural producer, and producers like to be in charge, right?
Yes.
So you had to jump into charge. Okay. Okay, so also a message here from our friend in Sonora, Oliver Rendon. And he wants to know about your experience filming in Sonora.
Oof, I love Sonora.
And what do you think makes this region, the Sonora, Arizona region, what do you think makes it attractive for filmmakers?
How are you, Mr. Rendon? Nice to say hello to you. I love, by the way, his films. Well, I think Sonora, to me, I've always feel like a second home. I had an amazing time shooting CESAR CHAVEZ there. I shot Cephalopodo, which is another film I did. And I love going back. We went back for the TACO Chronicles as well, twice. I don't know, Sonora and the Arizona desert have a secret somewhere. I don't know what it is. Yeah, I guess it has to do with nature. It has to do with, I guess it's a bucolic feeling of the desert, and you eat, you know, the food in Sonora is incredible. So, but why would I complain?
Okay, let's see. We have a few more minutes here, so let's see. So here's from a student. I like to fit in as many student questions as I can. This young man is just finishing up film school. He says he has 20 feature scripts written. Well, that's pretty impressive. And ready to shoot them. How does someone take the best idea and make it into a film? Okay, can you help this young man cull down from 20 to 1?
I have no idea, man. Have your boyfriend or girlfriend read them and give you criticism. I think opening up your scripts to other people that you trust is your first audience, and whatever survives, survives. That's what I would do. Your mom, your dad, someone who you like and trust.
Sounds good. Let's see. Okay, well, here's one just for fun, because, you know, it can't all be serious film talk. What is your favorite taco from Taco Chronicles? Or do you have a favorite episode?
Barbacoa.
Okay.
Always.
What?
Always barbacoa.
Okay, there you have it, Emma. Now you know. Okay, let's see.
I see Emma here.
Here's one. Netflix has been adding more and more shows for Latino and Hispanic consumers. Where do you think that will leave platforms like Pantalla, geared specifically for Spanish speakers?
I mean, I am a fan, and I love and I work with Pantalla all the time, because they had the initiative of what we discussed, to be honest and specific from day one. They were not shy or afraid of just doing content for our audience, for us. I remember I discovered Pantalla obviously from Paul and his team when they first pitched it to us. This is years ago, because we have a relationship with Pantalla and with Pantaleon for a long time. They distributed a lot of our films, and we made together CESAR CHAVEZ. But I do remember when my children were playing soccer in these tournaments that happen everywhere. And in fact, we were in Arizona at a tournament there. And I remember all the the little brothers and sisters of the guys who were playing, who traveled with their parents all the way to Arizona by car, that they will be entertained somewhere there in the corner of the field, and they will all be watching these dirty Mexican movies where everybody's cursing, and they'll be falling apart laughing, because it was so beautiful, because that is exactly the key. No marketing director from Sony has ever had that experience. They don't know how to speak to our audience because they've never been there. So Pantalla has that. It's all Latinos who are there and know exactly what we want and what we miss from our original countries, and what makes us be able to have a chat with our grandmother on the weekend, or with our mom who's working, and you have things in common that still penetrate that cultural barrier of being born in the US or being born in Mexico. So in the case you're Mexican, of course. But I do think that Pantalla will survive for sure because they have the most of knowledges and experience. They know the demographic better than anybody. So I think hopefully Lionsgate decides to give more potential to Pantalla, which I think they're doing, because I think Netflix is going to have a hard time competing with Pantalla rather than the other way around. Of course, the power and the market, Netflix is the big giant, no? But I think that niche, if you want to call it niche, but the beginning of, for sure, Pantalla is a niche market, and they own it. So for sure, it's going to stay there somehow.
Yeah, we were able to work with Pantalla, and they gave us some films for Tucson City, Mexico. It was a pleasure to work with Aaron Ashford Rivera. Did you work with him? Yeah,
Paul Pressburg, Mario, everybody.
Yeah. And, okay, so let's see here. Okay, one more here. I think we have time just for one more question. You spoke about a film fund in Mexico. You were referring to the tax program, right, through the government? Okay. Do you think that's something that could work in the United States to boost independent film production?
Good question. I mean, Mexico is perhaps the borderline, and then the other side is Canada of I guess, government subsidized into the arts. The US, for example, doesn't have a Secretary of Culture. Doesn't exist. Culture is in the US part of the free trade, right? It's another business. It's a tax incentive, right? You're a family with a lot of money, you build a museum because they cut your taxes, not because you actually care about the museum. So, I mean, there's
hopefully both.
Yes, well, not always. I will tell you half of the time there's not. But there is, of course, each state has its own funding, which is, I saw, for example, the films that the California Fund gave money to, and it's like, it's a joke because these people don't need the California Fund. So it just tells you how crazy it is. Do I think fund like, I mean, you have the National Endowment of the Arts, which works in a way like this, a different type of funding, but it exists. But I don't see, because I don't see how it can work, the US being such a big country. But I mean, the more money we can suck out of the government to spend in our movies, the merrier. So yeah, why not?
But do you think that funding source works best in Mexico, or how else are films being funded these days in Mexico?
Mexico now killed all of the other funding. We only have this law, the 189. Fidecine and Foprocine, the other, before we had three funding sources, Eficine, which is the 189, then you had Fidecine, and then you had Foprocine. Now Foprocine and Fidecine have disappeared, and everything is focused on Eficine, which really doesn't take money. It is the government's money, but it is as a tax incentive. It's money that comes from another person who doesn't want to pay taxes, or instead of paying taxes, wants to give it to filmmaking. So I don't know if there's a new change now in the way this money is given. Before, you had to go and convince a company to give you its taxes. Then we will go to the government together and apply for the incentive, which was making perhaps directors of marketing, or when you have a company and they tell you about the tax incentive, who in the company, if you're a bank, for example, will you give the task of choosing the movies? So it was also hard for the companies to decide. So normally you will go to, I know this guy, he probably, the marketing guy, can do it. So they will have a marketing guy choose the movies. Of course, this guy didn't want to take risks so that he wouldn't get fired. So he chose the movies that were perhaps less risky. So now it's changed. Now you apply, the government gives you the okay, your film is approved, let's say, and then you go to the companies who now really don't have a choice other than the pre-approved movies. So I think that is a good decision. I think it makes more sense. Also, there's a bunch of companies who, through the government, are uniting to put a chunk of money and then just take the projects as they get approved, so they don't have interference with the project. And I think that's a good decision. I applaud that. But yes, we lost our other funding, mainly because I mean, I guess the government is going through a process of reducing costs, and this is, like always, culture suffers first, right?
Right. Well, unfortunately, it's 4 o'clock. It's time for us to end, but I don't want to end talking about money. So why don't you leave us with anything else you'd like to say in closing to our filmmakers listening?
Well, I mean, I thank you for inviting me, Vicky. This is a great chat. I enjoyed it a lot. And I don't know, never give up. I think that the lesson to filmmakers is it's never been a better time to be a filmmaker. It's never been a better time to be a woman filmmaker. And it's never been a better time to make films or to make TV. So seize it, use it, work hard to get there, and it'll happen, because we're going to have at least 10 years of bonanza, and we should all enjoy it.
Okay, well, that's a great way to end. And Peter, are you going to come back to us to sign us off?
I sure am. Great. Thank you for everyone who attended. Thank you so much to Pablo. We're huge fans, so this was an honor for us. And thank you all for attending. Make sure to like Film Tucson on social media so you can follow us for any future events like this. We've got some others coming up. Thanks again to everybody.
Thank you so much, Pablo. See you soon, I hope. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll let you end us, Peter.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good day.